Welcome to the series, The Sacred Cows of Coaching, where we ask and discuss courageous questions to explore the unspoken rules and unquestioned practices in coaching, which might be limiting the coaching profession. In this episode, we're going to introduce ourselves to you so that you might find out a little bit more about us. And we will also talk about why we are doing this and why we think it is sacred and important to be discussed. But we will also start sharing some of the sacred cows and our perspectives on them. This series will be an emerging conversation, so stay tuned to see what happens. So, Neel, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Biran. And I just want to say it's a pleasure to sit here and be here with you, finally discussing the sacred cows of coaching, something we've been talking about for some time. So my name is Neel, Arya. I'm based in London in the United Kingdom, and I'm an executive coach and a coach supervisor. Been working in this space for over 10 years, following a career working for a number of well-known companies in the corporate sector. What about you, Biran? Who are you?
Who are you? It's a big question, but in a nutshell, my name is Biran Yilancioglu, and I used to say that. I still say it, but I am passionate about igniting people's potential, and that's why I am working as a leadership and executive coach for the last 15 years. I'm mentoring and supervising other coaches as well as training them, and I do deliver other leadership development programs for corporate companies, not just private, but in public sector and in NGO area as well. And yeah, this is me in a nutshell.
Excellent. And what is it that motivated you to want to talk about these sacred cows of coaching?
Oh, that is a very extensive question. So maybe one of the things that I can say is through my mentor coaching and supervision over the years, what I've witnessed that coaches they put themselves in a box defined by others, and unfortunately, because of this box, they hit this invisible ceiling, and they can't fulfill their potential. They can't perform at their best, which impacts their quality of service to their clients as well. So these boundaries, sometimes they are set up by themselves, but sometimes they develop through becoming an accredited coach. And what I am hoping is that as we start talking about these sacred cows, they might start looking at things from a different perspective, maybe a bigger perspective, and start to reflect more about their practice and serve at their best to their clients. That is my motivation. What about yours?
Thank you. I love the boxing that you're describing there. I think for me, I've always been really interested in edges. I've really been interested in emergence and innovation. And when I look at coaching as a profession, if we go back to the inner game of tennis, one of the founding texts, it's probably older than I am. The world was a different place. The formation of the coaching bodies, right, in the 90s, again, the world was very much different place, different time, different set of dynamics. And I'm constantly dwelling on this question of, well, coaching responded to the world that it was born in, right? And this world of performance, this world of developing people as assets, perhaps to help them grow, achieve their potential. But I wonder where we are now. And it's almost like the profession is kind of eating itself. It's like we're in this echo chamber. And I have this desire to be in dialogue, in conversation with other coaches who are looking out in the world saying, well, okay, well, what's going on now? what does the world need now? And
Mm,
there are a number of different responses, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of them in our conversations. But I'm drawn to this idea that actually we're in this messy middle,
mm,
and actually there's a question around what are we becoming? And
yeah.
I'd like to be a part of a conversation and be part of spaces where we are entertaining that possibility, perhaps, at a meta level as a profession, kind of deboxing and considering what might become. What do you make of
Mm.
that?
I love the metaphor again. Look at this, we're using metaphors. I love the metaphor again, like the profession eating itself,
Hmm.
right? And what makes me curious is like the evidence. How did you see as a supervisor that that is happening?
I mean, from my perspective, I see a few different themes. And this
Mm.
is more meta, right? This is not
Yeah.
about coaching itself. It's almost like to take a systemic lens, looking through that seventh eye and looking at the wider system and looking at the dynamics there. But I find myself drawn to conclusions, which I
Mm.
hold lightly, right? I hold lightly, and I think part of this is for us to challenge each other, but also to invite others into a conversation to share these thoughts and perhaps grow them and change them, evolve them. But coaching is an industry. It's a huge industry,
Okay.
and it's really easy for those of us that really love being a part of the profession, somewhat free, somewhat, atomized, running our own coaching businesses, to lose sight of this space that must drive or lead to millions, hundreds of millions, perhaps even billions in revenues in euros, dollars, euros, pounds, whatever it may be. So this huge industry, made up of these training organizations, the accreditation bodies, the consultancies, the platforms, and it's become vast.
Mm.
It attracts a huge amount of capital now. We see that in terms of the platforms and in terms of the AI dynamic, and within that, a lot of mechanistic practices, a lot of models, a lot of competency frameworks. And and I suppose within that, it becomes a thing, the box,
Yeah.
this box. And to continue with the metaphor, I feel in many ways that box is, it's made from rigid,
Yeah.
inorganic material.
Mm.
And yet the world is moving. I mean, it's late February here as we're recording this conversation, 2025, and suddenly things are coming to the surface that were brewing underneath for many, many decades. And suddenly we're saying, "Oh, what is this world? What is this order that we're in?" And I suppose if the box is rigid, how does it respond to that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we open up to being in this messy state that's not mechanistic, and perhaps there are lots of entrenched interests here?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm also thinking is that the box, how does that support or serve the client? Because as you were talking about the industry at the moment, you said like the training companies, the coaches, the accrediting bodies, but actually the clients, especially the corporate clients, is part of that industry as well. And I feel like that rigidness sometimes doesn't serve well for the corporate clients, especially I think it was 2023 ICF annual survey results. The biggest portion of the coaching industry is corporate leadership coaching, business coaching, executive coaching, which says a lot about the portion of clients. And also we know that in financial terms, they are the ones investing highly in this profession. And I'm wondering, how does it serve for them, but also how does it serve or impact the rigidness of the box?
Right.
So the reasoning that I have is one of the sacred cows that I would like to address is measuring the success of coaching, or measuring the return of investment to coaching, etc., which comes from, I think, the system showing the client that coaching works. But then, on the other hand, what I am seeing is most of the coaches, or even some of the coaching competencies that are being taught, encourages the focus to be more in the goal and action, and and that type of measurement. And then I feel like we are sometimes measuring the convenient over than the important.
And I find myself curious about the impact that has on you, Biran.
The impact on me, it makes me think. And it makes me think about many different things on different levels, like the impact, like I'm reflecting on, are we doing the right thing? And then I'm finding myself questioning, what is the right thing? What is right? Who decides that? Right. It leads me to, who defines coaching? How was it like defined 20, 25 years ago when this profession started to emerge in corporate settings, and in personal development other than sports? Like, who decided, who set those boundaries? Who set that definition? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. and so I hear you questioning yourself, right? Am I doing the right thing? Almost, am I coaching in the right way? Am I doing the right things to help achieve the right return? Am I hearing you correctly?
Actually, I'm not questioning myself, because I think I am over that. I find myself in my coaching, in my supervision, in my mentoring, trying to like my own supervision and for my supervisees as well, trying to get them find their rights, still staying in the boundaries, ethical boundaries, like staying within those ethical boundaries, but finding your voice as a coach to serve in the best way to the client, but not just to the client, also to the profession, because I believe it is our responsibility as coaches to develop and innovate the profession when it is required, right? So because this is our profession, if we don't do it, who's going to do it, right? So I'm challenging myself quite a lot to, be a little bit more uncomfortable and look at the situation, take myself outside of that box and find my way. I think I have found that for myself, and I am hopefully helping my supervisees and mentees to find it for themselves as well. But then I think there is a bigger impact that we need to create in the profession. Like, rather than it is a we question, we reflection.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I'm just drawn to your reflection that, you're over that, right? There's almost this journey that coaches seem to go through of holding on to the guardrails. Executive coaches, team coaches, supervisors too, right? What are the guardrails? And then a release, and then I make it my own. And I find that a really interesting journey, right? Building on what you're saying, in terms of sacred cows, we have these models, we have these frameworks, be they grow in one-to-one coaching, the peril frameworks, right? The Hawkins 5 C's, the 7 lenses, right? Whatever we want to talk about, we have all of these frameworks. And then I do find that as you're training and developing in these different fields, you're encouraged to hold on to them and then let go and then make them your own. And I think that for many people can be quite a tricky journey, right? And coming back to the box.
It is like what I see in the trainings, like they live habits, a lot of habits when they start their journey of becoming a coach, right? They abandon who they were as a leader or maybe a mentor. Instead of giving advice, starting to ask questions, instead of talking, just providing a space for reflection, etc. So they change many of their habits in the coach training, and they work really hard to gain those new skills and build new habits to become a coach. And then this takes a year, 2 years, right? And then they graduate from a program, they own their accreditation, credential, reward, whatever it is. It depends on different bodies, they have different names. They get their credential as a coach, and then they found themselves in that box, because like in the trainings, through the competencies and the assessments, they have to fulfill all the requirements of that box. And then we are now talking about leaving that as well, not fully, but being able to be more flexible, let go of those boundaries, some of the rules that have been taught to you to assess your level of coaching actually does not apply in all of the situation, in each and every situation. Right? It's tough. When you look at a coach's development over a 5 years period, like they start to learn new habits, new skills, embed them, which is very difficult already. And then once they graduate and get their credential, they see that actually they need to not forget, but at least park some of the things that they've learned and be more flexible. And then parking all those things is another journey. And I had, in one of the group supervision sessions we lead, I had a participant, and their question was exactly like that. Like, I have to do this in my session, like not to give advice, for example, right? But I am hired because of what I know, and I know they don't know some of the practices in that field, right? This is what they need. They just need to learn it. And I'm sitting in front of that client, not giving advice, not sharing my knowledge, and asking them, how can you learn about it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember exact words she used. She said, I feel like a fraud. I have that knowledge in that moment. If I share it, if I teach it, it will save tremendous amounts of time. But then I shouldn't be doing it because, like, coach, if you're a coach, you don't give advice. What a
Yeah,
dilemma.
yeah, absolutely. And it being almost an ethical dilemma. It's like I can actually help you, but I'm withholding because I'm staying true
Exactly.
to the box.
Yeah. And then going back to the original question, who created that box? And is
Who
it the right
created
box?
that box? And is it the right box? Right. And actually, do we, and this is what we're talking about, right? Are we boxing ourselves in by saying we are coaches? And might there be a refreshed consideration of what that means? Coming back to this idea of the box. I mean, we know, and often as coaches, when we're serving a particular client or working through a particular organization, we're asked to coach in a certain way. And typically, in my experience, you know, those ways are very influenced by accreditation bodies, and they're very influenced by these somewhat dated models of what coaching should look like, where you will be asked to spend a certain amount of time clarifying the objective of the call or the goal of the call, where you'll be expected to spend a certain amount of time really drilling into the actions and really testing when they're going to happen and how they're going to happen and what can get in the way. And if you're being true to the contract, then that is very much a box. And yet today, I feel that the opportunity is what happens between defining what someone wants to work on, clarifying where they might want to get to in whatever form that can be, however loose that intention can be, and working through the mess. You know, if we look at the wider system, you know, I really feel like we're in this liminal space right now. And it's almost like, where are we? What are we becoming societally? And therefore, what are we becoming as coaches again, right? What is this coaching and what is needed? And how do you hold someone through the messy middle, right? Where you are disoriented, you are confused, and you might not have clear answers. You might just need space, space to think, space to be held, space to hold down, slow down.
Yeah.
And there seem to be domains within our profession that are inviting us into this way of being and operating. But sometimes to me, it feels it's very much at the fringes. And is maybe, and I'm going to throw something else into the mix here, is maybe also something for questioning. So I talked a bit about the industrialization, the mechanization of coaching, but there's also the politicization of coaching, right? And, you know, and for good reason, different types of coaching interventions aimed at making the world better. So we have climate coaching alliances. We have coaching programs oriented to specific groups, people of color, right? Different genders, and so on. And I find it really curious to see what's going to happen now, because it does feel like the pendulum politically is swinging away. And so, what does that mean for coaching? But also, what is the role of politics in coaching?
Mm-hmm.
And for a profession that spends so much time saying, how clean can we be in the way we work with clients? We see these numerous examples of how we're not clean in some of the structures and the ways that we're proposing that coaching can shape and change the world.
Would you like to tell a little bit more about when you say clean, what do you mean?
So when I say clean in that context, it might be that we're being clean in the way that we coach, in the way that we ask questions, in the way that we play back. It's almost, there is a body of thought that is about almost diminishing the self in coaching, right? But equally, we then have the self as instrument.
Exactly.
Which is the careful use of ourselves in spirit of the coaching. And I could go off on all sorts of tangents here, but it's interesting that if there are folks that really believe in that philosophy of clean coaching, it's interesting that as a profession, we also seem to be asking this question around how clean do we want to be, or maybe we're not asking that question enough, but almost that invitation to, hey, what is it? I think it was Whitmore that said, we as coaches, we could sit idly by whilst the world has a climate crisis. So what is our role in that? And out of that is born, climate conscious coaching. People talking about our leadership role.
Yeah.
But are we here to be leaders? Right? And what does that mean? What does that mean in a profession that seems inherently liberal, and dare I use this word, woke? What do we become? Do you become the kind of the radical soldiers fighting for this agenda in businesses and in other domains, or is there something else that the world needs from us? And I suppose my view is that we need to really attune to the world around us. Yeah. And I feel that what we can really offer right now is the slowing down, the looking at things from different perspectives, inviting in more experimentation. And experimentation is not neat. We know that. So how do we become more adept, more mature at holding that messiness? That's the question.
And I think to be able to hold that messiness, we really need to be really resourceful, don't we? It's a big messiness to hold.
It's a big messiness to hold. I'm just noticing our shared energy at this particular point in the conversation.
Yeah. And we decided to have this fun, make it fun, but now it feels
you can't do that with me. I don't do fun. None of this fun.
Yeah. Okay. This is a serious thing, right? Oh, I see something is evolving. Tell me what's happening.
Oh, I don't want to take us off track, but I had this sense of we started with boxes, and I'm kind of got this sense of the you. And I had this feeling that we were just sitting there, just energetically, just arriving, right? Arriving into you. And happy to sit there with you.
So what I'm wondering, Neel, is when we decided to have this series, one of the hopes that we both, I think, shared was to trigger something, a reflection, or trigger that pause moment, slowing down, and get people to think and be more attuned, as you said, to the outer world. But also, I think what I'm noticing it requires for us, for coaches, to be more attuned to themselves as well. Like one of the things you mentioned was like, it's about taking yourself almost out of the equation and being more neutral, to be clean, right? There's this approach. But then we have another, not we, but there's another philosophy, and we talk about it. You coach as who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Then how can you do it? Like, and then what is the difference between me and you and another coach? Like that, the things that makes us unique.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've got this, oh, it's almost cliched metaphor, but it comes to me in this moment, right, of the snake shedding the skins.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if you start with the skin. You might start with the gross skin. You start with very much being non-directive, right? But there's different skins. And you get to a point in your maturity, and I've been spending some time over the last few days with some very experienced coaches and supervisors, and it's almost like those skins don't exist anymore.
Mm.
You're so far matured down this process that you've let go of all of these fundamentals, and you're in another space.
Mm.
But it just, when you get there, that becomes very intangible.
Mm.
And so there is this domain in coaching, and I feel lucky you talked about who you are as how you coach, or who you are as how you supervise. You're very blessed to be part of a community which is exploring different questions. And what does it look like without models? What does it look like without frames? Can we just be with that? Can we just be with emergence? We're having this conversation, it's not scripted. And we've come into it with some thoughts and ideas, but it's going somewhere.
Yeah. It is like, the potential will always emerge. Diana Whitmore, she says it, the guru, my role model, she says it quite a lot. The potential will emerge. And we just need to create that space and hold that space and create these moments of reflection as we do today. But I think what your comments kind of made me think is, what if we leave all the metrics as well around coaching, like the success metrics, the ROI metrics, the goals? What would coaching look like?
Mm.
What would be the impact of it? And then in the back of my mind, what I'm hearing is, oh, there will be like comments, or yeah, there will be comments about like, but then what is the difference between coaching and mentoring? What is the difference between therapy and coaching? And all these like other professions coming into play, and thinking there should be those metrics, and and still I find myself, do we really have to have those metrics? Like, yeah. And I don't have the answer. This is just a reflection and questioning process.
Yeah. And who are they for?
Who are they for?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So you're sitting with that question, is that right?
I sit with that question because what I'm drawn to is almost the boxes within the boxes.
Oh God.
Right.
Yeah.
And without being too abstract, but this is it, isn't it? It's like, what does our world need? And to your point, what is the work we need to do on ourselves in order to be able to enable that to happen?
Yeah.
So something here about our inner development. And again, if we think about the fields of psychotherapy, there's a certain amount of hours of therapy you have to have had to be trained, but we don't need that supposedly in coaching, right? We have to coach others, but we don't get coached ourselves. And so what is it that makes that acceptable?
Yeah.
Because there's very, very different levels of human development in our profession, and you can be a master this or a senior that in coaching terms, and yet your inner development might not be congruent with that.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, something there as well, I think, you know, and supervision is obviously very helpful in terms of helping us develop and grow ourselves, but there's lots more that we can be doing to develop ourselves as instruments.
Yeah. Yeah. Because supervision is more about your coaching profession, isn't it? Rather than your personal development as a human being. So, or in some coaching trainings, the mentor coaching is included, but it is still about your coaching profession, about the coaching competencies and skills, rather than your own personal, rather than enhancing your own personal development, like understanding who you are in this world. What are your barriers? How do you individually form your own boxes? And how do you individually get out of your or any box? Like getting to know yourself. Yes, of course, these are part of the training programs, but at the same time, I think that is one of the things that is totally missing. Like receiving coaching or receiving even therapy, maybe, to become a coach.
So I find myself coming back to the start of our conversation, right? And these sacred cows and courageous questions. You know, and our intention was very much, let's just have an open and frank conversation, and let's see if that's of interest to others in our field.
Yeah.
So what are we inviting, Biran? What are we inviting listeners, those that have got this far?
Hopefully they did. I know sometimes it can feel a bit heavy, this discussion, but I enjoyed it so much. So I think my invitation for our listeners or whoever is watching us is to think about their own sacred cows. Like maybe even leave it in the comments on this video, and we might pick them up and discuss them in the next episode or so. And also that would be tremendously helpful if you have been so far with us in this video and liked what we're doing. Please hit the like button as well so that we know this lands well, or there is an appetite for this type of reflection. So my invitation in a nutshell is to think about their own sacred cows and yeah, let us know about them. What is your invitation?
Yeah, give us feedback. Love to hear different perspectives. Join the conversation. The more the merrier.
Exactly. The more the merrier. So we didn't put a time limit when we started, Neel, and I really don't know how long it has been so far, but I think it might be a good point to pause this conversation reflection today in our first episode, and then pick up from where we left in the next one.
Sounds perfect. See you soon.
Okay. See you soon. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Bye. Thanks.